Da da da, stranger, which is hello, strangers in Cornish, more or less. It sounds German, I'm sorry. I'm in Cornwall at the moment, visiting my dad. If you imagine a postcard of the British countryside, that's basically Cornwall, where I am. Also, here's Tilly, my little sister.
Tilly, are you a good girl? Okay, gonna hide under your table. Gonna hide under your table, Tilly. Oh, look at your face. Good girl.
I know this is meant to be pre-recorded, but I found a brilliant story that I simply have to tell you guys because it's fantastic. So I can't drive, so my mother drove me from London to Stonehenge, and my dad picked me up from Stonehenge and ferried me down to Cornwall. On the second half of my journey with my dad, we passed a place called the Wookie Hole Caves. That's Wookie spelt Wookey, but it's pronounced Wookie like Chewbacca the Wookie. I know Wookie Hole Cave sounds rude, so stop laughing. The laughter can come later in the video. Now, there are some brilliant stories about Wookie Hole Caves that I have to tell you, and some of them involve Doctor Who. So, Wookie Hole Caves have most recently been used in David Tennant's final episode, The End of Time, where the Doctor is told by the Ood that the Master has returned to Earth. Wookie Hole Caves was also used in a Fourth Doctor adventure, or episode, starring, I think it was Tom Baker as the Doctor, and Elizabeth Sladen as Sarah Jane Smith. The episode was called Revenge of the Cybermen. Obviously, the Cybermen were the main antagonists of the week. 4 weeks before the Doctor Who crew arrived at the caves to film, a diver drowned in the caves, and his ghost had been sighted throughout the remaining 4 weeks after his death. The crew just laughed off this story. They went into the caves and discovered a rock that was called the Witch, because that's where the man had drowned. They decorated the witch with a crooked hat, a cloak, and a broomstick. An hour and a half during filming, an electrician fell off the witch's rock and broke his leg. Later in the day, a boat carrying Elizabeth Sladen went haywire and knocked her into the ice-cold water. A stuntman dived in to save her life. Although Elizabeth was unharmed, the stuntman ended up in hospital with his injuries. Spooky stuff. Now, in 2005, when Doctor Who was being rebooted, a prop Dalek was stolen from an exhibition and held hostage inside the caves. The kidnappers, if that's the right word, sent the Dalek soccer arm out of the cave with a ransom note. They wanted money, only £500, not for charity, just for themselves, and only £500? And the kidnappers, apart from the money, also wanted to speak to the Doctor. Here's where things get really interesting. The police couldn't storm the caves because A, the UK police don't do that, and B, to keep the caves so complicated they physically couldn't. So that was out of the window. The owner of the cave released the following statement. The arm has been removed quite carefully, hasn't been ripped off, there was no torture involved. So if we get the rest of the Dalek back, we should be able to put it back together, like a jigsaw. Can you torture a Dalek? That's something you don't want to do if you can do it. And best of all, a doctor did answer the kidnappers' demands. It wasn't the current Doctor, Christopher Eccleston, who was the 9th Doctor. It was in fact the 6th Doctor, I believe was Colin Baker. We don't know exactly what happened between the 6th Doctor and the kidnappers, but the Dalek wasn't recovered from the caves. So I'm just going to go ahead and assume it's still in the cave somewhere, armless. That in itself would be a brilliant Doctor Who story, wouldn't it? Just a Dalek driven mad, going around the caves without a weapon. That's terrifying. And in this video, one more Dalek abduction story. Back in the 70s, around the time of the Wookie Hole Cave event, 2 Daleks were being loaded from the BBC studios onto a truck. Now the Daleks were left unattended on the roadside for a brief amount of time, and during that time they were stolen. So what did the BBC do? They brought a 3rd Dalek onto Blue Peter, and the Dalek demanded the human race for help.
SOS! SOS! Assist! All Blue Peter viewers, find the Daleks! Emergency! Emergency! 2 Daleks missing! Find the Daleks! Find the Daleks! Emergency! Assist! Emergency!
So the Daleks that were kidnapped were discovered and reclaimed by the BBC. The video below in the description tells you how. So yeah, that's something, isn't it, strangers? Or as they say in Cornish, innit? I'll see you all next week. Take care.